Good afternoon, everyone. It's just turned 2 o'clock, and it's a meeting of the Economy and Infrastructure, CDC. Item 1 is apologies for absence, and it was here I was going to say that Gail is not with us in person because she's ill and she'll be on Teams. And who else is with us on Teams? Paul.
We have Paul, yes.
Paul is under the weather as well.
Yep, sorry.
So that's it.
And I've had apologies from councillors Stuart Rice and Will Thomas, Chair.
Apologies from Nicola if she doesn't turn up.
Yeah, no problem.
Item 2 then, disclosure of personal and prejudicial. Nobody. Item 3 is to approve the minutes of a previous meeting, pages 1 to 4. As normal, I'll go through the pages. Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. All agreed? Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. And straight on to item 4, and that's the update on the Tower Riverside Corridor Strategy. And that's you, Gail. So off you go.
Yes, well, I'm assuming everyone will have received copies of the update report. So myself and Paul Ralph, lead of the external funding team, are on here this afternoon just to spend a few minutes running through the report section by section, if that's okay, and just to share some visual material to support any discussion. Without further ado, I mean, the purpose of the report is to provide an update on progress to date in terms of development, regeneration and enhancement along the Riverside Corridor, and also to consider priorities and next steps going forward. So Section 1 of the report sets out the context, how the river is an important defining feature in Swansea's landscape and history, and also how the Swansea Local Development Plan, the Council's statutory policy for the area, identifies the river corridor as a strategic development area and sets out a high-level policy context for a range of uses, including leisure, residential and employment. A number of members may recall a lot of work was done on a Tower Riverside strategy back in 2018-19, including a number of member workshops which we held at both the Civic Centre and in the Guildhall. However, the resultant draft strategy wasn't taken forward to full public consultation and adoption, largely due to the arrival of the pandemic, it has to be said, though it has been used informally and quite actively by myself and also Paul and his team as a guide for development investment and in terms of funding and regeneration bids. Section 2 of the report, if I may just share some plans on the screen for a moment. So just to provide, is everyone able to see this clearly? So I've just put up a plan here now showing, thank you, showing the extent of the study area effectively. So the Tower Riverside Corridor, as defined in the local development plan, runs longitudinally down the riverside, approximately from the Park and Ride, taking in the Harvard Copper Works area, the east and the west banks of the river, the St Thomas Station Yard or St Thomas Waterfront site, as far down as the Ship Inn, ending at the river bridges. And here's a little bit more detail on what that comprises of. So you have, as I say, the Harvard Copper Works site, the White Rock East Side Corridor, the Morford Road regeneration area, and then culminating at the St Thomas Station site to the south. Just to talk a little bit about these components, here we have the St Thomas site. So this is on the east bank of the River Tower. So here we are looking south towards the sea. It's a 6-acre site, so quite a substantial site close to the city centre. The aim here is to develop a new residential-led mixed-use scheme with a distinct sense of place, which connects the St Thomas community to the riverside and to the city centre. And that St Thomas site is one of the sites that is being taken forward for regeneration under the Shaping Swansea initiative. So you'll be aware that we've appointed development partners Urban Splash to work with us on that, and in terms of working up plans for new high quality development proposals on this site. So we're looking towards a milestone, I understand, of April 23 for them bringing forward some concepts and a scheme for that site. One of the other key sites along that corridor is the Havard Morva Copperworks. This is a view looking south towards the river, across the park and ride in the foreground, and the Overspill site off here to the left. So the key aim for this site is, again, to develop a mixed-use, heritage-led destination which capitalises on that quite significant waterfront location to the river. As I say, it's a site with significant potential and will hopefully accommodate the arrival point and base station for the Skyline Luge leisure proposal. And again, it'll be Urban Splash that will be taking a key role in bringing forward the wider Havard Copperworks site for regeneration, and will be working with potential developers and investors such as Skyline to develop a deliverable master plan for that site. Moving on then to section 3 of the report, and if I can bring in Paul at this point. So this is largely about the restoration of existing heritage assets, including listed buildings and scheduled ancient monuments at Havard Copperworks, which have been a particular focus of work over recent years. So as I say, if I can just bring in Paul here to run through some of the significant progress on these schemes. Paul?
Thanks, Gail. Yeah, so members will be aware, we've spoken about these things, I think, quite extensively, about the significance of some of the heritage in the Lower Swansea Valley and the significance of the former copper industry and the way it shaped really the valley and its settlements. So the work that's been going on, particularly starting with the powerhouse building and the buildings adjacent to it, as kind of the first major project on the site since it closed, and making sure that there's an end tenant in place in the shape of Penderyn, with the copper links that they have through the copper stills that form part of the distilling process, that it's reimagining the industry again in those buildings, but also providing projects of scale to stimulate the regeneration of the site. And that one of the critical things was having that project as the catalyst for further development. And you can see many of you have seen the progress on site and the quality of the product that's being generated there now with those buildings. And at some point in the new year, hopefully by the spring, Penderyn will be operational in that facility. We've also got just behind those buildings the Weybridge Porters Lodge buildings also completed with additional funding, and we're looking then to progress the laboratory building if we're able to secure levelling up funding in the new year. So fingers crossed on that, which is the next significant building to be looked at. Also, there'll be scope to do some further works around the Musgrave and Vivian engine houses. The Musgrave engine house in particular is a scheduled ancient monument, still containing within it the Musgrave engine itself, which the Friends of Havard Morva Group have been working on plans to get that engine restored, but in advance of that, getting the engine house itself re-roofed and the crane actually inside the building. The Friends Group were instrumental in getting that crane operational again. We've also got the bascule bridge, the Morva lifting bascule bridge, which the restoration is about halfway through now. So the span itself, Gail is showing the photos there of before and after. The span itself is now prepared. The next stage is working on the western abutments, it's a timber structure in a difficult location, so sourcing the timber, etc., during COVID, and the plan for what is effectively an industrial structure being refurbished. It's a new area of work even for CADU as to how you go about these things and finding the most cost-effective way of doing that. So the next step in the new year is going to be starting work on the western abutments, with the aspiration obviously then to fully reinstate the bridge within the next couple of years. I think, yeah, then it's back to you, Gail.
Did you want to say anything on the stabilisation work for the
Oh,
lab?
sorry, apologies. Yes. So with the laboratory, so at the moment, the building has been stabilised with existing resources. Scaffolding has been placed around the building to maintain its integrity, and it will be the key building to launch a levelling up project in the new year if that bid is successful. It'll be the key cornerstone project of future levelling up.
And there's also a little bit on the pontoon as well in terms of things that are about to happen in 2023. So this has planning permission and funding and will be sited right next to the engine houses and obviously enable, increased water-based recreation in and around the Lower River Tower area. So,
and I think the immediate benefit is the Copper Jack, instead of having to do a U-turn, we'll be able to dock. And the Penderyn facility will be arrive online about the same sort of time.
Yeah, so I think that sort of covers the scope of restoration works. I also wanted to end as well with section 4 and 5 of the report, which covers the Morver Road regeneration area, sets some context really in terms of the changing character of that area, and how development enhancement proposals should really be adapting to that new mixed use role, and how connectivity in particular needs to be enhanced in that area. Also, in terms of the east bank of the river, any future strategy should be seeking to tap into the very significant potential for informal leisure and enhanced green infrastructure and biodiversity. And to sort of further expand upon this, the final section of the report, which is the appendix, sets out a significant number of other proposals which could be brought forward, subject to funding and resources, of course. So just to conclude, really, the report obviously is trying to highlight the significant progress over the recent years and the ongoing work. We've got an appendix there which sets out some future potential areas of work, and a lot of those came out of our previous workshops and the previous draft strategy that we worked on. So I guess we just need to look towards a way forward really for this strategy, and I guess it's perhaps about reflecting on the previous work that was done as a baseline, re-evaluating perhaps the deliverability and exploring any new initiatives that might now be relevant 3 or 4 years on as we are. So open to the floor really to consider that further on how we might want to take this forward.
Yeah, thank you both. That was a good dual act there. You work well together.
Yes, thanks, Gail, for the further update on that. A couple of points. Obviously, you've touched regarding obviously the issue of the pontoon and the locations. I gather there's still a bit of a wrangle going on with our friend the Duke of Beaufort about perhaps before we can put these pontoons in place. Is there any progress on that? And also, in regards to the lower the new Morver Road and the link there leading up to along the River Towie there, I understand there's still one of the businesses operating on the top of Morver Road there. I think it's the Zip Fasteners components. It's regarding their boundary fence, which is seems to be an area where the people can go so far, and because the fencing is out further than what the previous buildings and units were, it's not actually accessible for people to continue that walk, because, as you know, the plan is that we can go all the way from the seafront right up, past the Akak road, right up through there and right up as far as we can, as far as more or less as far as the stadium. So, is there any developments in regarding the consultations with this business on perhaps having some sort of idea about if they can give any approval, if we can have the fence brought in a bit to where they are operating, or are they intending moving to another area? Is there any update on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to deal with the latter question there, and perhaps touch on the sort of matter regarding the Duke of Beaufort as well. I mean, continuity of access along the east and the west banks is absolutely vital, and in particular, I think the West Bank, because it does provide that connectivity potentially with the city centre, direct connectivity between Liberty Stadium, city centre, and with adjacent developments. And as you say, there's a reasonable quality path up until you get to, I think it's Swansea Industrial Components is the particular landowner. So a number of attempts have been made over the years to engage, and I believe there is also a scheme, although it's a completely draft scheme, that shows something that could be perhaps built out and around the landowner concerned there. I think our preference would be to work with them. Obviously, the character and sort of nature of land use is very much changing along that corridor, and it would be interesting to see now, some years on, what their feelings are with regard to potential redevelopment, or, as you say, setting back to allow continuity of public access along that waterfront. So yes, that's certainly something that we should be picking up. And similarly, where there are other new developments coming forward along that corridor, such as Pipehouse Wharf, we would be seeking to set development back suitably to accommodate an appropriate width of cycleway, footway, active travel route along that western side of the river. In terms of the pontoon, yes, Duke of Beaufort, conversations are still very much ongoing there. I'm not absolutely sure where we are at the moment, continuing to engage, obviously, to establish suitable permission and consent to put that pontoon in place. Paul, do you know what the latest update is in that respect?
I think the latest update was it's very close. There's not much left to do on that. It's imminent. So yeah. Yeah.
So consultations ongoing, but clearly a vital part of that.
Procurement has continued in the meantime, so the scheme will be ready to deliver as soon as permission's in place.
Yeah. On the pontoon, are we just talking about the one, or are we looking to put more than one pontoon in? Because if I remember, when we were talking a few years ago, it was just the one. But obviously, for it to be a tourist attraction, you should be able to access both sides of the river.
I think, Gail, initially it's one, isn't it? But there is scope for further at various points along the river, and other locations are being looked at tentatively. But again, the refresh of the strategy is a key part of that then, Gail, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Talking with adjacent landowners will obviously be part of that. I mean, it'd be great if we could have another pontoon potentially down near St Thomas that would allow water users to get on more, closer to the city centre. And when you talk about sort of, connecting the east and the west sides of the river, that's obviously vitally important as well. And I think, that we had an aspiration from our previous workshops and discussions about putting a new pedestrian cycle bridge up at Harvard Copperworks to connect with White Rock, to provide a more direct route for cyclists and pedestrians in that area, and to bring both sides of the river closer in terms of their use and in terms of enabling access, and access from communities on either side of the river would be really important. So yes, it'd be something that we'd very much like to look at. I think is perhaps a new cycle bridge, new active travel route that crosses the river.
Yeah. Well, as you've mentioned, active travel. May know the strategy that we've got, but we haven't adopted. And I know we have worked from that strategy, but at the same time, it's not been adopted, and it's something that I would like to see updated, move forward, taking into things like active travel. And then, there's grants around for active travel, and that may be one that we could look into, and to take in the thing Mike was on about on the other side, was to make that route as well, an active travel route. Because you said that there would be like a circle then.
Yes.
And that would be very, very attractive. And also taking in other pontoons, because if we want to improve, and introduce river taxis, they would want more than one place to stop off. Because the one we're talking about, if somebody's in Swansea and they decide they want to go shopping by the Liberty Stadium, it's a fair walk from the pontoon around to that shopping area. We want to, you know what people are like. They want to get right next to the shop where they want to go to, and this is something that we could look at in the future strategy, or the same strategy but updated. Okay.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I guess the next steps, you know, to take it forward as a fully adopted strategy and policy context would be to do some public consultation on the detail. Obviously, a lot of work has been done in the past. It would be, you know, fairly simple to dust that off again and to have some sort of direct engagement with communities. Whether we could do perhaps some targeted meetings on Teams in this way, or actually go out. I think what we were envisaging is some meetings in community centres with boards and officers present to take on board some ideas or initiatives for a refreshed strategy, or indeed a delivery plan or action plan for the Riverside area, something that focused perhaps on what we would see as deliverable outcomes that could tap into available funding. So it would be a case of myself, perhaps with members of Paul's team, reflecting on funding availability to see what could be taken forward in the short, medium and long term to develop an action plan. Mark.
Yeah, so if it's okay, Chair, I'll come in on that point. Just to comment and advise that there will be a sustainable transport strategy coming forward in the new year. It's a topic that's been considered by one of the other CDCs, the Climate Change and Nature Recovery CDC. So it's been spoken about there in relation to things like you mentioned. Active travel will be a part of that. So hopefully members will see that come forward as a new strategy that cuts across a wide range of our different projects. This one included in the early part of 2023.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Mike.
Yeah, Gail. You said obviously the overall development. You mentioned Pipe House. I know that there was interest shown a few years ago from Coastal, but I think I know that never transpired. But just as I say, I would be interested if there's any movement on that, because when we Paul obviously alongside me, Councillor Lloyd, both of us on the planning committee, obviously Paul's the chair, but when the development come forward for the former Unigate dairy site for the development there, we put a condition on that access would be made available to the river walkway, so we could, if any RSL or developer come in for Pipe House, at least then we know that we can put that condition on. If that depot gets obviously put for housing needs, but as I say, but that issue can be addressed by us doing that on planning, by putting a condition that access is available for the actual river walkway as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about sort of retaining scope for having that sort of continuous north-south route along the riverside, but also ensuring that there's permeability back towards more of a road itself, back towards communities that relate to High Street and so forth. So yes, absolutely, that would be a fundamental part, I think, of any sort of design considerations around future developments along that riverside corridor.
Right, I can't see anybody else indicating. So from this, Kate, can I suggest that our way forward then is to look at an updated strategy to come back to us with during that I'd like us to go to consultation, which we didn't do last time, and that would be another part of it, because I think Appendix 2, when you read through it, it's very exciting, isn't it? And you know that the bits I picked out are the cycleways, heritage trail, and things like that. You know, I don't know about whether I would say would cost the least out of everything we want to do, but to look at that as well. So I don't know if you'd be happy to like update it. I know it's a lot of work and everything like that, but it is something we've got to look at, because we started it, but we haven't finished it.
Yeah, it's quite a hefty document in itself. That the strategy was prepared, which was prepared, as I say, sort of three years ago. But I think, from reflecting on it, it does need an update. We do perhaps need to look at areas around the strategy area, in particular to look at sort of improved connection with communities. And I think it would be useful to reflect as well on how deliverable some of these are. And I think the key to that will be further engagement with Paul and his team in terms of what funding is available at this particular time, and try and look at them in terms of deliverability over the short, medium and long term. What can be done, what can be prioritised in the context of available resources. And I think that will be an important aspect. Maybe we could be looking at a sort of a slightly more slimmed down document itself, as say one that focuses more on actions than the context, which will obviously sit in the back as a sort of a contextual document which we can access to support our sort of approach.
Yeah, I think what I'm looking for as well is, like you say, the slimmed down version. I'm smiling when you say that. It's easier to read. It's easier to read, isn't it? And
Yes.
but what it is, when it comes to us, then we could pick things out of it. Let's say, like a heritage trail, we could go back to the cabinet member, because that's where it'll end up, and then say that this is what we want to move forward with this, because you're not going to do everything at once. So we got to pick things that we can do. I wouldn't say over a short time, because nothing gets done over a short time. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add that we've been doing some work in the background with some of the Friends groups in the Valley. So Friends of Havermorva, White Rock and Morriston Park, to start them thinking about the heritage trail side of things as well, because you'll be aware they do quite regular tours of the sites, and it was part of that was about trying to get them to think about how they work with buildings and structures that may be in private ownership and being like Penderyn, for example, but thinking about how they enliven the community with what they're doing as well. So they have done a pilot suite of leaflets using Awards for All funding, which again didn't require us to access that. They've one of them led, and we supported them with that work. So there are some examples that we can use to build up following the branding that used at the Copperworks site. So there's some, and that is lower cost and very deliverable, and something that could be done quickly as well with good impact.
So that's good to hear. So can we start with that? No, the next time we come back, because we're not going to have it all. We're going to say, well, this looks good. This looks something that can be done short term. If there's grants or finance available, fantastic. If not, that's when we got to go cap in hand to the cabinet and say this is where we want to move forward with this, because this is a vast site, and my view is it'll be fantastic for not only the residents of Swansea, but tourists who come into Swansea, not only come in for Skyline, which will be an attraction, but there'll be other things, especially with the river taxis and with the Copper Jack. This would be really exciting. So if we talk about it in the next, it will be next week or two. I think we're busy this weekend. We all are, aren't we? So yeah, maybe something is, and then with Phil Holmes as well, and then we'll come back with an item that we can get through either to cabinet, and then we can move forward, like I said, slowly but surely. So will you be happy with that?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we can do that. We, I say myself and Paul's team will work through that. Maybe some sort of scoping and evaluation document initially, and then sort of consider the ways forward from that, whether that be public consultation and setting out a programme perhaps for reporting back with a draft in due course. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, everybody's nodding. That sounds fantastic.
Okay.
Because the other thing that jumps to mind is when it comes to land ownership, if there's land there in private ownership, then you wouldn't want to discuss it in a committee like this. So
No.
we may have to arrange a workshop, which we've done in the past, and things like that could be thrashed out there and then brought back to this committee.
Yeah. Okay.
So is everybody happy? That's the way we move forward. Thank you very much. That's been an excellent meeting, that is.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you. That's the end of it. And before everybody goes,
Sorry.
huh?
Item 5.
Yeah, we'll go on to that now. Once they do understand it for the work plan, don't they?
Oh.
So yeah, before you leave us, unless you want to stay for the work plan, can I wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Paul,
Yes.
Happy Grant hunting.
Lucky share.
If you, like I said,
Okay.
if you want to stay, you can. If
Okay.
not, don't worry about it. We won't hold it against you if you leave.
No. Okay. Thank you very much.
I hope you're both
Happy
both
Christmas.
better in the new year.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you very
Mark's
much.
all right. You're not ill, Mark.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
With that, go straight on to item 5, which is the work plan. As you can see, in January, we've got the residents' reward coming back. A bid, I'm hopeful will be with us in that meeting, because I think that'll be coming to at the end where it's going to be kicked off. So I think February would a bit late, because I think that this is going to be introduced to the public. I think St. David's Day they were looking at, weren't they? So hopefully we'll get everything in place as well by January. Then we got the local economic development plan. We had a presentation on the area development plan, which takes in Neath Port Talbot and Pembroke and Carmarthen, and we're looking at doing our own off that. So that'll be that one. And then the introduction to the Swansea Bay strategy, which we didn't have in the last meeting, but I will be assured it'll be ready for the next one. And then possibly, whether it's February or March, is when we get a report back from our meeting today, with something concrete that we can take forward, because it would be nice to see this area develop. We've walked it. We are on the last time we had a PDC. We walked this area. Yeah. It is vast, and we were only one side of the river. We weren't the other side. And you know, the thing of a cycle track going both sides across the river as well is tremendous.
Chair, I haven't worked there and seen the plans that I actually, used to be in and out and working there, seeing it being brought into what up. Sorry, no, as you say, it is very exciting, and having worked there and seen these buildings now being brought back in that we can use to promote the city of Swansea, because it was unfortunately after the close in 1981 that the arson problems there and vandalism, but now with everybody pulling together, I think that this is only going to be a good news for Swansea. And I know, as in terms of the cabinet member for Treasure and Tourism, the jewel in the crown. So hopefully that yes, it's very exciting, and it's good for the ward that I represent, because hopefully it will bring employment for people living there as well.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mike. Never guessed you were the board member there.
It's great.
Right, if there's nothing else, can I again wish committee and everybody present a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a healthy New Year, because we seem to be falling by the wayside now. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that.